Hello, and welcome back to Let the Story Write Itself podcast. This is episode 38, and I am discussing the path of expansion, which is the own transformation journey that I went through, starting from being on the brink of university at 17, then walking that path of the whole university career, emerging from that into various employment as an employee, and gradually shifting out of that student employee mindset and really owning a more sovereign state of being that led to my first solo journey around the world that was over a year long. And it's now been over a decade since that time and stepping into a new level of sovereignty, essentially. So, this path of going from a state of veiled to fractured to sovereign is one that I've walked on before and that I'm still walking on and just on new levels. It's the path of expansion. So, I want to touch on a few different aspects that are part of this journey here. Some you may recognize, and some you may be stepping into more fully, and some you may be wondering if you would actually shift into that at some point. Throughout this time, I invite you to consider the idea that of what actually is sovereignty, because it's not necessarily a particular goal, it's not necessarily a particular destination or place. It's more about a state of being. It's it's about ownership of your choices, it's self-trust, it's learning to make decisions from that place. So it's really an ongoing practice and it's about aligning your actions, your thoughts, and your decisions with that self within you that is calling you forth essentially. This is where the role of intuition comes in because a lot of times there is a call from within, and that is where you feel a certain dissonance from wherever you may be now. You realize that there is some kind of gap, if you will, an energetic gap. So intuition can show up in, bodily sensations and inner knowing subtle signs. For me, if you've heard any part of my story, this were the sign of, I felt hollow, I felt empty, I felt a sense of dread. These were the bodily sensations I had during my university orientation day at 17 that kind of, if I was paying attention, if I was attuned to that, if I was not in the veiled state, I would have well, I think I did recognize it as something being off, but, you know, whether depending how connected you are to your intuition and then actually being able to take the action. So this is where the alignment of your actions and your thoughts and your decisions must all come into convergence because you might have the thoughts as I was having, but didn't necessarily take the action or make the decisive move that would be walking away from university, walking away from that state of being that was not necessarily in my highest alignment. So there is that inner knowing, there are subtle signs such as that intuitive voice that whispered to me, go travel. So these are all like nudges from within. And the way that you would differentiate this from, say, the doubt or the fear is that there was a certain doubt that like the whole thing is that I was doubting that inner voice. I was like, well, why did I stay in university over the inner voice that was calling me, right? Well, for one thing, it was like I had a fund saved for me. It was like the convenient choice, essentially. It was the choice that obviously a majority of people do, going to university right after high school. So it felt like the noise, or at least the opinions of the world outside, were stronger than my own inner self trust. So the intuition was showing up highly. It was highly showing up for me. It was showing up in the way I felt. I could feel it. I had the idea for an alternative route. And these are all the quiet whisperings from within. This is the intuition. And it's differentiated from the fear and the doubt because a lot of times these are things that you can't control in a sense. You can't control how you feel. You can almost pretend that you don't feel it. So a lot of times the doubt and the fear is the thing that will make you pretend or have to put on like a facade or almost justify it to so that you don't have to feel what you actually feel, right? And that is a major differentiating factor in listening to your intuition. It's often the bodily wisdom, it's the thoughts that you don't try to have that just come through anyway. It's the stuff that you're feeling. So, living in alignment with your purpose is something that you embody through your action. Because all the while, you might be having these downloads, you might be having these intuitive insights, but what you do with it matters more. Because when I was 17, I spent the next 5 years in university having these same recurring thoughts, having these same bodily sensations within. But nothing changed because I never took any new action. It doesn't matter how much you are in fact connected with your intuition and might be having, your bodily wisdom is always speaking to you. It doesn't matter if you know it. The question is, are you actually following through and walking the walk? Are you, you know, embodying it through action? So, this is why aligning your actions with that intuitive knowing is part of becoming your sovereign self. So, even though I went through the 5 year journey of university, it wasn't until I emerged from it that I had that white space, if you will. I had that spaciousness again once more to be like, phew, okay. I can now decide. It's like tabula rasa, right? So even though I have a degree, I really feel like I was just a beginner. I'm like, I feel like I am starting all over again. Like I am definitely not pursuing this career or this path. I am not going further down this road that was did not feel like I finally feel like I can just take a breath again. So essentially, this was where the fractured state began, right? This path to sovereignty because I was in that veiled state where I was like pretending that I wasn't feeling what I was feeling. Even if I wasn't pretending, essentially, I was not acting in embodiment or alignment with my intuitive knowing during my university career. So I always feel like you are so wise at any given time. You don't have to learn anything. It's like it's already within you. At 17, at 10 years old, at freaking when you're a baby, you have this innate wisdom and your inner soul print. It's not something you have to acquire or learn. It's already within you. It's just how much are you truly just being naturally as you are. So I really had to go back to this state of reclamation and remembering who I really am at core and unraveling from whatever limiting beliefs or this state of pretense and even conditioning that occurred that led to me staying in this path of misalignment for 5 freaking years while I was in university, essentially. And it's not even the university that was the issue because for every person, it's unique. It's not about the thing itself, it's about who you're being as you're doing anything. If I'm being someone who is having to squelch my truest feelings and thoughts while I'm doing something. That is not truth. That is not your highest self. That is not your inner alignment. And that is essentially what I was having to do to get myself through university. It was like sheer willpower, essentially. It was like operating on brute force. It was just like getting through something, you know, it was like doing something without your whole self being there, while it wasn't necessarily like difficult in the way of just going through the motions and doing the work. It was difficult because it was very draining on my soul. It was feeling like it was not in a state of ease with my natural state of being or who I was being called to. And so it was really once I got out of university that I started using my voice more. I enrolled myself in a psychotherapy program. I knew that I needed to connect more with my truth, with my essence, with my own power, essentially. I needed to become more of my own person. And that was not who I was being when I was at university. I needed to, you know, move into more expansion, essentially. It's like I, I was almost like just being the same person throughout the 5 years I was in university. In a sense, I didn't necessarily grow in that respect. And while it seems almost ironic because many times university is the place that people, expand or grow so much. But for me, it's like I lived at home during the entire time I was at university. I was driven there most days, pretty much almost every day, essentially. I didn't really do anything that was growing or stretching me. And while I was doing the coursework, it wasn't really something that was growing me either. Like, okay, I can go through the motions and do the thing, but there was something within me that was like, this is not my path. And, so that intuitive whisper to go travel was my inner being already knowing the path that was most aligned with my greatest path of expansion, the path that would allow me to grow the most and the most fully into who I really am meant to be. So, a lot of this failure essentially to walk away from the path that wasn't mine was an attachment to that matrix, right? It was that for some reason, without even knowing it really, there was some conditioning that took place that connected me to some beliefs and systems that held me back from fully just being in my fullest sense of alignment and who I really am. Whether that was, the fact of, the narrative of going to university after school and studying vocation, and then having certain occupations, well-defined occupations laid out, rather than the more unknown path of the entrepreneurial route. And also just that idea of listening to your own inner voice over, say, the opinions of other people. And this is this is the this is one aspect of that may be in the way of your sovereignty. It's that attachment to a matrix. It's the disconnection from your taking action, embodying action in alignment with your intuition, from using your voice more fully in regards to your own wisdom and your experiences. So often we're studying from a textbook, at least through school. We're listening to teachers. We're kind of passive intakers of just information and random knowledge, it seems sometimes. And we're not necessarily delving into our own inner wisdom and experiences. And that is very much tied into your self expression and self actualization, in that self trust and self knowing. And this is not really something that you might really have much practice in or that development in. And so a lot of times there's this imbalance where if your own inner self trust and knowing is not so strong and deepened and well developed that it's able to override any noise or thoughts or conditions that you pick up from society and the world at large and other people's opinions, then it's very well that you may not be able to take the action that your inner self knows, just because that doubt and fear, you know, that might not feel like doubt or fear, but it really is more about that giving your power up to outside factors like society and common narratives of society and the predominant thoughts of other people rather than your own. And I found that it was really this piece that moved the needle. It was developing my own inner self-trust so fully and more powerfully that that became the dominant factor in my decision making and the actions I took. And that became the tipping point that allowed me to say yes to myself more and more often and building that strength and that muscle essentially. So, in moving, this path of expansion really requires you to step into this place where you're detaching from this idea that authority exists outside of you and recognizing your own self as the authority. And this often comes to being relying on your own intuition, your own inner guidance. It's using your voice more, it's detaching from the grid of the structures and patterns that keep you locked into a more of a state of passive state. And even school a lot of times more trains you to do a certain vocation or occupation, something that's already in the box, that already exists. It doesn't really train you to like adapt, to think for yourself, to kind of go with the flow essentially. Although they might say this to you on a certain level, and some professors might be more talking about like, you got to think for yourself. You can't just passively sit there and listen and write and take down notes. You got to start, synthesizing this as yourself. This can very much remain just in your as an idea rather than an embodied practice, because it's like unless you know what that feels like from actually taking action, from actually living experiences that get you moving in this new way, it kind of is just relegated to a mental state rather than an embodied state. And this, like, I felt like this is what I was kind of just living through in university. It's like, okay, I'm smart, I'm intellectual, I can understand the concepts that like all these ideas that I feel like I'm not living my true self and up to my true potential. But what does that actually mean? How does this actually translate into the action piece? And this was all the stuff that I started living more fully outside of the classroom, essentially. And when I was just experimenting, exploring, and going about on my own, that then culminated in me actually reclaiming that part of myself at some point and realizing that I somehow in the years then in between and following, I became more of my sovereign self. And the fruition of that was the fact that I was finally able to say yes to the unknown, to the adventure that was calling from within, to the path less traveled, so to speak, if you will, that then allowed me to walk through that portal, essentially open that door, you know, that I kept shut when I was 17. And it's really this pivotal moment that unlocked the door to the round the world travel. And it really cemented and just kind of solidified and anchored in this new way of being. And that I had really come full circle to the state of knowing myself more fully and actually taking the action now and being able to rely on myself more. And that self trust, that intuition, that embodied knowing, that practice essentially was developed over the years, and it's like I became so much more sovereign from the self that I was at 17. So essentially, I wanted to highlight though that during the period of the fractured state, there's very much a process of expansion that you might not even have the entire picture. You don't even know. It's like it's very much moving with almost like a dance. It's like, you don't have like a step by step plan. A lot of times it's feeling it out. It's moving with that intuitive flow. So trusting your intuition is essentially trusting yourself because it's the unseen. It's the part that you can't tangibly point to. That, the people who are like, you must see it before you believe it. It's like the total flipping the script, right? It's like you must believe it before you see it, even when the path is not clear, even when you don't have the map, when you don't even know what the entire plan is. You don't even have a plan, essentially. You're just moving according to an inner trust, that self trust. But what happens is you essentially you essentially start to surrender more and more. You realize that it doesn't have to be like a linear straight path. It's not like a game plan of A then B then C. It really has to be embodied action and the place of surrender and being willing to walk that path and take that journey into the unknown and write the story essentially as you're living it. In university it's like you have a syllabi. I always think that you have a syllabi, so you know from A to B, you know clearly what the end result. You have a certain expectation, and I think it's that walking away from that type of certainty, that type of like a already written out by someone else kind of a plan that you have to be willing to do, especially if you're more of an entrepreneurial spirit or your path is more pointing towards being an entrepreneur. You really do have to be willing to write the syllabi yourself, essentially. And that means refining, reiterating, taking a blank page and filling it in yourself and be willing to erase, delete, rewrite it as needed, essentially. It's that creativity, it's that human spirit. And so these are some tips tips and pointers and some of my own experiences and really the key points that occurred during my journey and the path of my own expansion. It's very simple in a way, and it can be easy, but it does involve courage and it does involve, in a way, it feels like taking a leap. If it feels like taking a free fall and just trusting that there is, that that you will fly, that there is a wave of momentum to catch, and that your own inner wisdom and the soul that you came into the world with is what gives you your wings. As as unbelievable as that might sound, or as cheesy or trite, or just like, you may have heard it so many times that it's just in your mind, but to actually feel it in your heart and your soul and start embodying it in your through your actions so that you just live it, that is how you actually become sovereign and you move into your most expansive self. So this is episode 38 of Let the Story Write Itself. And I wanted to end this episode with an invitation to deepen your own journey and step into your fullest expansion, essentially, to live more fully in your truth and claim your space into the world. And I offer coaching, essentially, to take you on this transformative journey and also to work with you one on one to help you gain this deeper self trust. And just from having lived it, that you can collapse your own A to B, essentially, help you write your own map with greater certainty and greater self-trust so that you can shorten the time frame that it takes for you to become your more sovereign state that is that state of self-trust, because you're not necessarily feeling all of the doubts and the fears as you're doing it, which definitely makes it infinitely more lengthy and not as potent when you're not fully believing and trusting in your own power. So that is the value of having a guide and a mentor to really anchor in your own self-trust even more fully and powerfully and energetically, potently, so that you can embody your sovereign self more fully, much more quickly, much more easily, and with all that much more, all that all the more self-trust, essentially. So that is episode 38 of Let the Story Write Itself. And I need to get a drink of water because my voice is definitely wavering in and out. So I will see you in the next episode.